Jamie, I give you controls there.
Okay. Hi everyone. I'm Jamie. So I know the CCAA is pretty far along now, but I'm going to kind of go back to the beginning for DOT at least, and just kind of give an overview of where we started and what we did and where we're at today. So the first thing is, okay. So the first thing that we did, we needed to kind of analyze our system because we had no idea like what kind of monarch habitat existed in our rights of way or how much of it. So this was last summer. Our ultimate goal was to get a better understanding of how much monarch habitat we actually had in our rights of way, because a lot of the roadsides in Delaware are extremely narrow, and the entire right-of-way is just designated as the clear zone. So a major concern has kind of been the feasibility of achieving the adoption rates that are laid out. So we tackled this by generating random points using ArcMap, and we did a desktop review to eliminate points that weren't necessary to evaluate in the field because there was no vegetation or the road was way too narrow, and we could tell that we were not going to be able to do conservation measures there. So the remaining points, which was about 180 points, we surveyed in the field. We used Monarch Joint Ventures Rapid Assessment Protocol. I don't know how many of you are familiar with that, but it was pretty easy. It was 1 page, and it was just a chart you filled out with the right-of-way width, the mow width, and you just tallied the milkweed plants if there were any, and the percent cover of potentially blooming plants, adjacent land use. So it was kind of similar to information that we would need to collect anyway for the CCAA. And then we had all this data, and we weren't really sure what it was telling us. So we worked with Cardno, and Dan helped us analyze the data that we collected to try to determine if, based on what already existed in our system, if we would be able to meet the adoption acres target for Delaware, which we found to be 2,859 acres. So that's how many acres we would need to perform conservation measures on in order to be in compliance with the CCAA. So we found that it could be possible, and Dan kind of gave us the most feasible conservation measures for us, which are listed here. So out of all the conservation measures that you can do, these are the ones that would be most feasible and at the least cost to DOT. So for us, we have majorly been looking at like idle lands and set-asides, just because we are going to do conservation mowing, and we already do that in some places, but that is definitely for us, for Delaware, one of the harder measures to execute for various reasons. I'll talk about those on a couple slides from now. But so I just wanted to give an example of one of the set-asides that we actually finished this year. It's called Dove's Nest. It's a 43-acre pollinator mitigation site, and it was associated with a new alignment project in Delaware. So it was previously a abandoned farm field, and it was slated for, I think, tree plantings. And one of our state agencies came to us and asked us if instead of doing tree plantings, we could do a pollinator site. And my old boss, she doesn't work here anymore, but she is the one who got me into the CCAA. She kind of tackled that and tried to see if it would be feasible or not, and we found out that it was. So the site was burned. There was a prescribed burn performed in March of 2019, and then it was seeded with a drill in April 2019, and it was planted with a seed mix consisting of native wildflowers that bloom across the growing season. So again, like keeping pollinators and the monarch in mind. It's the first of its kind in Delaware, and it's going to be maintained in perpetuity because it's a mitigation site. and it will be burned every 3 to 5 years to ensure that the site stays in early successional habitat. Various vegetation surveys are going to be performed this year. We did baseline surveys last year, and there was 0 milkweed at the site, so there's only up to go from here. And then prior to seeding, oh, I already said that. So some of the species that were planted was partridge pea, orange coneflower, black-eyed Susan, brown-eyed Susan. We've planted 3 types of milkweed, swamp, common, and butterfly. Joe pieweed, blue vervain, cardinal flower, Indian hemp, wild senna, flat-topped white aster. And we partnered with the Delaware Forest Service, the Delaware Department of Natural Resources to help us kind of accomplish these major things. So the main thing for now that we are focusing on is making sure that there are no invasive species, and there is a slight issue with some sweet gums that were already there prior to the burn and didn't get completely burnt off. So that's an obstacle. We have to figure out how to kind of get rid of those so that they don't overtake the site. But ideally, we want to use this site as a template for other sites. Obviously, every site has specific conditions and not all of them are the same. But for partnerships and contracting, like this is a good example to use. And it so far has been a success for us. It was a lot of work. But there was black-eyed Susan and partridge pea all growing out there this summer. So we're hoping that this summer will be even better. So that's a success. And then some obstacles that we are currently facing in terms of signing the CCAA is that like I said, a lot of our rights of way are extremely narrow. So as you can see in these pictures, like these pictures are what almost all of our, I call them back roads, but for the CCAA, it would be our rural roads or the lesser of the adoption rate roads. I can't remember what they're called in the CCAA specifically, but not the highways. These are the other roads. This is what almost all of them look like. There's not a lot of room to do conservation mowing because where the utility pole is essentially where our right-of-way ends. And a lot of times we find farmers just kind of mowing that area anyway because there's milkweed there and they see that as a weed. Obviously, if the Monarch does get listed, that would be a different situation because they would, by law, not really be supposed to be doing that. But right now, we don't really have a way to enforce them to stop. So it makes it a little hard to implement conservation measures such as a reduced mowing regime on these back roads. So in addition to that, there are also cases where just regular residents, not farmers, are also just kind of going out and mowing grass near their house because they want to see, they're still in the mindset of that nice manicured mowed grass and they want to see that. So those are some things that if we do sign and if the Monarch does get listed, we would need to kind of find out a way to tackle those cases. And then another issue internally with DOT is that on our highways, we do have some medians where we've tried to implement conservation mowing. However, there are 4 different districts in charge of making sure that all of the mowing gets done. And the turnover rate for like mow operators is pretty high. So taking the time to train and educate the staff about mowing and milkweed, it takes a long time. And then new employees come aboard and we have to train all over again. So we're trying to come up with an effective way to educate each district and let them know where they should 100% not be mowing. It's very difficult for us in Delaware. Even some of our designated, we have a program called Enhancing Delaware Highways. So it's a program underneath our maintenance and operations division, and they essentially find plots and pick plots where they either do seedings or conservation mowing, and they're doing that specifically for pollinators. And there have been times where even those sites are getting mowed because the mowers just mow everything. They don't really pay attention. So we were hoping that like appropriate signage and like excessive signage would stop this, but there's even times where the signs just get run over and mowed. So that's an issue still lingering that we are really trying to come up with the best way to tackle that, because we do want to see these sites successful and not being mowed when they shouldn't be. But it is a tough thing for us. So for the future, I have been working on compiling all of DelDOT's current pollinator efforts. So like I said, we do have a few programs that are designed to benefit pollinators, such as enhancing Delaware highways. We have reduced mowing regimes in some locations. We have worked with the University of Delaware. They have a couple pollinator plots in our roads, in our medians. So the issue is that all of these different divisions and partners are doing this work, but we're not all talking to each other. So my mission has kind of been to figure out a way to get all of this information and compile it, because I think a lot of the worry that is coming about reaching the adopted acres target of 2,859 acres, it all stems from us not really having a clear-cut number of acres where we're already doing conservation measures. So I think if we knew what we're already doing and how much more we would have to do, that would kind of settle a lot of people's minds here. I've been trying to advocate for getting all of this done and staying on top of it, but a lot of times it's hard because that number just sounds super big to upper management here. So another thing is DelDOT's Right-of-Way section has also been working to improve their pollinator stewardship efforts. So they've been planting wildflowers on excess parcels. So that's another case where like I need to know which parcels they're doing that on, and so that I can put that all together. So ultimately, we want to have a map with all of these different parcels and all of these different conservation measures with an attribute table that is designed with the CCAA in mind, and all of the information that we need for tracking and monitoring for the CCAA would be in that attribute table. And I am currently still waiting for everyone to kind of send me their locations and the different things that they're doing. So the map isn't done yet, but I have like a draft version. So yeah, that is kind of it for us. In terms of the CCAA and our implementation, I think we currently are really still a little stuck on achieving those acres. So everyone here is, as much as I hate to say it, I get the feeling that they're kind of leaning towards waiting to see how the listing decision goes. Just because if we don't have that clear knowledge that we're going to meet those adopted acres, we don't want to be in a situation where we're not meeting them and then we're out of compliance with the CCAA. So we are trying. I think that we can meet those acres. It's just a matter of knowing, getting everyone in a room and figuring out where we're doing conservation measures now and where else we would need to do them, and then really starting to identify some excess parcels, which again, like I said, we have been doing. We have been doing the excess parcel identification. So when project teams give us new projects and there's parcels that they're acquiring, but they're not going to be developing the whole parcel, we kind of are starting to get the idea to set those aside and really think about doing plantings or conservation mowing in those areas. So I'm not sure if anyone has any questions, but that's all I had. I don't know if this is going to help anyone or what, but that's kind of where we have been at right now for the CCAA.
Great. Well, thanks, Jamie. I think it's really helpful. Also, I appreciate you just being really open about some of the challenges that you're facing as well. I think that's helpful to hear. We've had a couple of questions that were chatted in, and of course, if anyone has questions they want to answer or ask, I guess, over the phone, that's great too. But one of the questions was, which adoption rate were you using for your 2,859 acres? Is it the 5%, the 8%, or a combination of those two?
So it was a combination. The 8% was for all of our highways and interstates, and then the 5% was for those back roads that I was talking about. Why can't I remember? Local roads, that's what they are. The 5% was for the local roads. And so it was a combination of the two. Again, Dan helped us with that. We have a whole spreadsheet with all of our lane miles and all of the different calculations for the different types of roads, and that based on the width of those rights of way, that is the number that we came up with. I do believe that includes the width from the center line. So it's not, in my opinion, it's not 100% accurate because we're including the pavement. So there's acres that we're potentially going to be enrolling that there's no way we could ever do any conservation measures on, but they're impacting our adopted acres target. So far, I have not come up with a good way to avoid that, because the best and easiest way for us to calculate our enrolled lands that we want to enroll is just by using the center line and an estimate of the right of way. A lot of our rights of way vary in width, so if we wanted to just include our system in terms of what's actually vegetated and in the right of way, that would take forever to figure out those numbers.
This is Jim Wolf, Caltrans. I sympathize with that difficulty. We actually put forth a pretty aggressive GIS modeling of our right of way in order to establish our actual acres that are suitable for milkweed.
Okay.
So our numbers are just about twice as much adopted acres as you're calculating, because we were able to exclude quite a bit of our right of way as unsuitable. It was really paid off for California, because California was looking at 425,000 acres total enrollment versus what we're down to now, about 70,000 acres, which are suitable habitat. So really our adopted acre number, and I really would encourage anybody to try to tighten those numbers up to what's actually right away.
Okay.
Actually suitable, because the cost. We're getting a lot of pushback already, even with the smaller adopted acres numbers from our districts.
Mm-hmm.
Just because they're very worried, can we actually meet the adopted acre needs, even if it's only like 5,000 acres for California.
Right, exactly.
So
did you task someone with the GIS modeling, or did you do it? Because I'm pretty good with GIS, but I definitely am not into any GIS modeling or anything like that. So if that was an easier way to identify and tighten the numbers, that would be super helpful. But I don't know. I guess what I'm getting at is I don't know who here has that capability.
Yeah, you do need a certain level of understanding of modeling and scripting.
Okay.
ArcGIS. So you have the right tools available to you. You just need to get it over. And I'd be willing to put you in contact with our GIS specialist who helped me with it. I mean, I developed the model myself, but I needed some expertise in some of the back end scripting to make it work. And so we could. Yeah, I'll share my email online here.
Okay, sweet.
Here, and you can contact me.
All right, thank you.
No worries.
Great. Other questions for Jamie?
It looks like there's.
This is. Sorry, I was just going to say, Jamie, this is Dan. I think, well, first of all, thanks for sharing this with everybody. I think it's always helpful to see how you're thinking about it. And I think, yeah, with your challenge with the adopted acres is, yeah, I mean, so the two approaches would be kind of like what Jim was saying there. Like, if you can exclude some of those paved areas, that would help bring your numbers down. And then there's also always that variance option too, right?
Right.
So you can justify, because you're so constrained on your system, you have that approach if need be.
Right. Yeah. We've definitely kept that in the back of our heads, and everyone here kind of knows that that is an option. I've been calling it a last resort option just because I know it's more work up front to do a variance, and I know it takes longer for you guys to kind of review and approve that. But obviously, if we get down to it and we're kind of out of ideas and out of options, we have the knowledge that that is an option for us.
Yeah, and this is Laurel. I think you guys probably covered it in the discussion just now, but my only question, and I also really appreciate your presentation. That helps me get an understanding of kind of the landscape context that I haven't been able to see being here behind my desk. But I guess my question would be, why enroll those rural roads where there really is an opportunity for milkweed and there doesn't really seem like a whole lot of legal risk to maintaining those areas if Monarch were listed?
So the rural roads, even though the photos that I showed were mowed, there actually is at times quite a bit of milkweed in those roadsides. There's been patches of them. There's monarchs in them, but the farmers are mowing it. And we do mow those roads as well because it is considered, because of how narrow it is considered the clear zone. So it's not just farmers mowing out there, but we do run into those cases. So the ones I showed were extremely narrow and like definitely didn't have any habitat, but there are other ones where they're maybe like, I don't know, like 10 feet wide or so, and we're still kind of mowing most of it, or it's a combination of us mowing it and then the farmers mowing the rest of it, and there are patches of milkweed. So obviously that's not on every road, and I guess we would have to weigh the risk versus the pros. I don't know. I don't know how we would do that, but I know there is milkweed on those local roads. So in my mind, and what my old boss had in her mind, was that it's just safest to just enroll the whole system. That way we know that we're covered. But obviously, again, like if there's a better, more efficient like way to do that, then we would want to do it that way. I'm not aware that there's an easier way to do it if we know that there's milkweed out there and we're going to be mowing it. Yeah.
I guess, I mean, I think you guys are on the right track with your discussions and the way you're thinking about it. Going back to the risk thing, it just seems to me like the roads that are more narrow would be the first in my mind to drop off that high priority list. That, the clear zone is not part of, maintaining areas as clear for human and public safety. That's a high priority and not something that would ever be considered human and safety always comes first. So I don't know, I'm sure you guys have been thinking about that, but that's what popped into my mind seeing those roads that are
okay. Well, that's good to know, because I was not thinking about it like that. I was thinking that those roads that I did show with the narrow rights of way, I was thinking that even if there was milkweed in those sections of the roadside, we would still need to like worry about like take.
No, yeah, not in the clear zone. That's
okay.
This is Chris in Minnesota. I guess why wouldn't we need to worry about take in the clear zone?
So my understanding is that needs to be maintained as clear for safety reasons, and human safety always comes first.
Yeah, I mean, that's true, but there are many different ways to maintain it, and they don't have to. I mean, you could do the mowing and woody tree removal in the wintertime when the monarch wasn't present and still maintain your clear zone.
So maybe, Dan, you can help me, and I might be misunderstanding. I apologize if I am, but I thought that when we described the clear zone in the CCAA, we specifically were talking, like, I'm remembering that figure, and I thought we were talking about putting conservation measures and maintaining habitat for a monarch outside of that cleared area.
Right, yes, the conservation measures would typically happen in areas that are beyond where the clear zone is. I think, and maybe Chris, if this is what you're getting at, is that that clear zone isn't necessarily always routinely mowed, but it is mowed maybe more than once in a year. So, you know, you're still going to have impacts there potentially on what vegetation is growing there.
Yeah, exactly. We certainly wouldn't prioritize the clear zone for conservation, but
Yeah.
we have some stretches of highway where we don't even mow it every year to keep the woody things back. So I mean, that's primarily the purpose. I mean, the prairie vegetation, the grasses and stuff aren't an issue in the clear zone. It's the woody things that start to grow in over time.
Right.
Gotcha.
Okay. I don't know if there's a miscommunication on what I said, but I'm getting confused because, okay, so are you guys talking about doing conservation measures in the clear zone? Because I know we're not going to do that. I was just talking about, I guess I was just talking about definitely still enrolling those roads, but then obviously those roads are contributing to our adopted acres overall. I don't know if that's making sense.
Yeah, I mean, that makes sense to me. And that's kind of what we had been thinking as well, is we'd want to enroll the clear zone because there's still a chance that there's going to be milkweed and monarchs, and we are, you know, mowing, you know, those areas for safety reasons on occasion. And so, and, you know, in certain areas, we maybe do that during the active season, but to totally exclude it, it doesn't make a lot of sense to me, just because there are definitely monarchs using the clear zone. And Laurel, for your information, the clear zone can be pretty wide. It depends on, you know, the design of the road and in the speed and curves and things like that. So in some cases, the clear zone is pretty wide, 50, 60 feet or more.
Okay, so yeah, I think I'm the one that confused the issue. I'm sorry. I was thinking of like intentionally having monarch habitat in those areas. And I still think that if we're prioritizing areas to include in the CCAA, thinking about those narrow roads are probably low priority. But I hear you guys and I understand now.
Thank you, Laurel. That makes sense.